distance learners, I hope you guys are doing well. For today's assignment, we are going to be talking about something called characterization. So characterization is when an author chooses or the author makes a choice about how they choose to describe their characters and their story to us, the readers. We briefly discussed this a little bit last 9 weeks when we were writing our narratives. So we're going to kind of look at this a little bit more from the perspective of a reader today, or things to look at as we read stories so that we can make notes of and pay attention to significant or important elements in a story about characters. So the definition of characterization is on the screen. It says, an author has to make decisions about how to show their reader to the character. So this is what characterization is. So as readers, we are going to be the ones looking for how the author chooses to present these characters to us. So there are a couple different types of characterization. We talked about these also last 9 weeks. Direct characterization is when an author makes the choice to tell us specifically and directly what the character is like. If we look over here on this right side right here, it says the character was, or she was, a cheery, always upbeat person. So this, in this instance right here, it's showing us directly, the author is directly telling us that her personality is upbeat and that she is cheery. An additional example, it says, the patient boy and quiet girl were both well-mannered and did not disobey their mother. Instead of taking the time to show a story or an instance where they were patient and quiet, and that they obeyed their mother, that is an example of that would be an example of indirect characterization. They took the shorter amount of time to specifically tell us what their personalities were like. That's an example of direct characterization. All right, indirect characterization is when an author writes so that you learn about a character indirectly or through their behavior. They choose to show us and not to tell us about the character. For example, right here, it says, her lighthouse smile beckoned across the crowd. So that right there is showing that she has a beautiful smile, and that might give us clues about what kind of a happy, cheery person she might be. If we look at this other example here, bear with me, it's a little gross, but it says Jonathan burped in Jamie's face and laughed at her disgusted shock. I hope you never do this to someone. However, if we saw or read a story of where that instance took place, one word that we might use to describe Jonathan in that instance is very rude, because it's very rude to do something along that lines. So this here is not describing Jonathan as rude. It doesn't say Jonathan is a rude or was a rude person because he did this. It's describing something specifically that he's done and showing us that he is rude instead of telling us that he is rude. So one of the things we can use as we read through stories is this strategy called STEAL. So it stands for speech, thoughts, effect, actions, and looks. So as we read through stories, we can look for these 5 elements of a character, and it will help us learn more about them. And this is what we're going to be using in our major grade project for today. So as we read this story, we're going to be looking at what the characters say, which is their speech, their dialogue. How do they speak, especially to other characters? We're going to be looking at their thoughts. What does the character think? What is revealed through their thoughts? What do they believe and value? What motivates them? We're going to be looking at the effect of the characters, as in what effect does the character have on others? What's the relationship between this character and others? How do they treat each other? We're going to be looking at their actions. What does the character do? How do they behave? How do they react? And then we'll look at their looks. What does the character look like and how do they dress? Because often descriptions of the character's appearance will, at the bare minimum, help us remember them and sometimes also show things about their personality. So what you guys are going to be doing today is you are going to be looking at this short story called 11 by Sandra Cisneros. It's a very short story. It's only about a page and a half, but it's like spread out over 3 because there's all this white space. So you're going to read this and you're going to look for elements of STEAL or elements of this characterization that the author, Sandra Cisneros, chooses to show about this main character in this story named Rachel. So you're going to look for Rachel's speech, and you're going to look for her thoughts. You're going to look for her effect on other characters, the characters in the story. You're going to look for her actions, and then you're going to look for descriptions of her looks. The assignment is right here. It's a major grade. So you're going to finish watching this video. You'll have already read this story, and you're going to use this story here to look for each of these elements, just like I mentioned. So how you're going to do this is I have examples and the formula and all of it laid out right here. So It should be pretty obvious, but if you have questions, of course, you can ask. But what you're going to do is once you found an example where the character is describing her speech or is speaking or is describing her thoughts, you're going to copy that and you're going to put it in quotation marks. And then here's my example. You'll put it in quotation marks and then you'll add a plus sign and then you'll explain why that example of their speech or their thoughts or their effect or their actions or their looks is important to that character. So if this example right here, I chose the excerpt where that says, and when you wake up on your 11th birthday, you expect to feel 11, but you don't. You open your eyes and everything's just like yesterday, only it's today, and you don't feel 11 at all. So this is an example right here of the author describing some of her thoughts in the story. So what I did is I chose that excerpt because I believe it's important to who the character or what the character is. So this quote, my explanation of it was, this quote describing Rachel's thoughts reveals that she is a deep thinker because even at only 11 years old, she is contemplating complex ideas about the passage of time and human perception of it. Most 11-year-olds, don't think about these kinds of things. So that was my explanation of why that example of her thoughts was important. So you're going to do that for each one of the steel elements. So you only need to do one per each. So one for speech, one for thoughts, one for effect, one for actions, and one's for looks. So first thing, read the story, and then look for each of the steel elements, text evidence, and then you'll explain it, and then you'll submit it here on Canvas. So you can copy and paste this and paste the things into those little brackets if you'd like and turn it in that way. As long as you have your text evidence and the explanation for each of the 5, you're going to get a wonderful grade. So if you guys have any questions, you can definitely reach out to me. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.